Jim Carrey's Grinch makeup was so excruciating, they literally hired a guy from the CIA to help him. How the Grinch Stole Christmas turns 25 years old this month, so here are some things I bet you never knew about it. The story behind How the Grinch Stole Christmas starts in 1955 when Theodore Geisel, aka Dr. Seuss, first created the character of the Grinch in an illustrated poem for Red Book magazine called The Hubbub and the Grinch, where the Grinch is a con artist who tricks a creature called a hubbub into buying a useless piece of string by telling him the string is worth more than the sun. Around this same time, Seuss's first wife Helen began to suffer from chronic health issues, which led to a very dismal Christmas in December 1956. The author was also growing frustrated with the commercialization of Christmas, and so on December 26, 1956, he looked into the mirror and recalled feeling very Grinchish. And those feelings inspired his next book, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. He wrote it in spring of 1957 and finished the whole thing in just a few weeks. Dr. Seuss's biographers said it was one of the easiest books he ever wrote. The book hit shelves in December 1957 and became a big hit. As of 2017, it sold more than 7.5 million copies. And so, of course, Hollywood would come sniffing around. But back in 1953, Dr. Seuss wrote a live-action movie called The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T, and he was so disappointed by how it turned out, he almost wrote off Hollywood completely. He decided he never wanted to sell the movie rights to any of his books to Hollywood. But in the mid-1960s, famed animation director Chuck Jones, who'd actually previously worked with Dr. Seuss on the Private Snafu cartoons at Warner Brothers during World War II, approached Seuss with the idea of turning the Grinch into an animated TV special. Seuss was reluctant at first, but ultimately he said yes. How the Grinch Stole Christmas first aired on CBS December 18th, 1966, and it did huge ratings, becoming the 6th biggest show of that week. And the animated special would go on to become a beloved perennial holiday classic. Dr. Seuss died of cancer in 1991 at the age of 87. After his death, his second wife, Audrey, began making deals with Hollywood. And in July of 1998, she offered up the film rights to the Grinch to the highest bidder. But she had significant demands. She wanted a $5 million upfront payment, 4% of the box office gross, 50% of merchandising revenue, 70% of book tie-in profits, as well as music-related income. She also required an A-list actor to play the Grinch, someone on the level of Jack Nicholson, Eddie Murphy, Robin Williams, Adam Sandler, or Jim Carrey. And she wouldn't consider any director or writer who hadn't earned at least $1 million on a previous project. Despite those demands, half a dozen studios were willing to play ball. 20th Century Fox teamed up with director Tom Shadyac, who just made Liar Liar and the Nutty Professor. Their version included Jack Nicholson as the Grinch. Paramount, New Line, the Farrelly brothers, and John Hughes also submitted ideas. Tim Burton was also approached at one point, but turned it down to make Sleepy Hollow. Universal then teamed up with producer Brian Grazer and filmmaker Gary Ross. But Audrey Geisel rejected all of these proposals. Brian Grazer then thought maybe a pitch from his producing partner Ron Howard would be stronger. Howard was a dominant director at the time, whose movies had earned dozens of Oscar nominations. But Howard was focused on adapting The Seawolf around this time, so he initially said no to Grazer. Grazer persisted, however, and convinced Howard to take a meeting with Audrey Geisel. While preparing for that meeting, Howard became obsessed with Cindy Lou Who's character and imagined a movie that expanded her role, built out the world of Whoville, and fleshed out the Grinch's backstory. Geisel said yes, and the movie went into development at Universal. It was later revealed that Universal Pictures paid $9 million for the rights to The Grinch and Oh the Places You'll Go. Jeffrey Price and Peter S. Seaman were then hired to write the Grinch screenplay. They had previously written Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Doc Hollywood. They wrote 8 drafts total, and Audrey Geisel had a lot of control over the script. She even had veto power over individual jokes that she found inappropriate. She cut out some sexual humor about a fur ball, plus a joke about the Housteens who lacked a Christmas tree and presents. And she also rejected the inclusion of a stuffed trophy of the Cat in the Hat on the Grinch's wall. Brian Grazer told Time in 2000, "She was really tough on me for a year and a half." Seinfeld writers Alec Berg, David Mendel, and Jeff Schaffer then did uncredited punch-ups on the script. Then it came time to cast the movie. There isn't that much information about casting. John Stamos claimed last year that he auditioned to play the Grinch, but he had to back out because he was allergic to the prosthetics they'd have to use. Though it's worth noting that Stamos' anecdote is in direct conflict with Audrey Geisel's requirement of an A-lister. According to that Time article from November 2000, Jim Carrey asked to meet with Geisel when she first put the rights up for auction in 1998. Quote, "Instead of shaking her hand when they met, he spun her around, held her close, and made a Grinch face." Geisel was sold on Carrey immediately, and the actor later said he was eager to do it because he grew up with the story. So it seems like it was Carrey's destiny to play the Grinch all along. Jim Carrey based his Grinch accent on on Sean Connery. 18-year-old actor Josh Ryan Evans played the 8-year-old version of the Grinch. Despite being a teenager, Evans was 3'2" and had the appearance and voice of a child due to a specific form of dwarfism known as achondroplasia. The actor died in 2002 at the age of 20, and The Grinch was his last movie. Taylor Momsen was 6 years old when she played an aged-up 6-year-old Cindy Lou Who. The character was no more than 2 in the TV special. Anthony Hopkins was the film's narrator. He recorded all of his lines in one day. And 6 dogs total played Max, but the main one was Kelly, who was rescued from a pound by Ron Howard. Howard also put a number of his family members in supporting and cameo roles. His brother Clint played Hubris, his father Rance played the elderly timekeeper, and his daughter Bryce Dallas Howard cameos as Surprised Who. Many of the Whos went to Who School with a choreographer prior to filming to learn how to move and be comfortable as a Who. They also hired some Cirque du Soleil performers for the acrobatics and stunts. Los Angeles-based sweater designer Seuss Cousins, yes, her first name is Seuss, and her team produced 250 original pieces of handmade knitwear for the movie, including 8 copies of the red striped sweater for Jim Carrey, and they did it all in 4 months. Jim Carrey's makeup in The Grinch is now legendary, but makeup designer Rick Baker butted heads with the studio about it in pre-production. Initially, they wanted Baker to just paint Carrey green and call it a day, but Baker wanted a more fully built-out appearance for The Grinch. So he applied a makeup test to himself, and then he leaked the footage, and after Universal saw that, and it got Jim Carrey's approval, they all agreed on Baker's more elaborate original plans. The Grinch costume, meanwhile, was made of dyed green yak hair, which was sewn onto a spandex suit. Universal set the movie's budget at $123 million, a big number for the time. Adjusted for inflation, that would be $243 million today. Filming then began in September 1999 on the Universal backlot, where they built the entire Whoville behind the Bates Motel. And they also shot across 11 sound stages total. Jim Carrey hated wearing the makeup. The first day was especially hard. He later said, "The first day was 8.5 hours, and I went back to my trailer and I put my leg through the wall. It then took 2.5 hours to apply each day and an hour to take off." Carrey later said it was extremely excruciating and compared it to being buried alive. The fake snow on set also kept getting into the giant, uncomfortable yellow contact lenses he had to wear, so he'd often just not wear those contacts, and they later had to fix his eye color in post. Carrey's personal makeup artist, Kazuhiro Tsuji, recalled Carrey being difficult to work with, calling him irritable and, quote, mean to everybody. Carrey would apparently disappear from set and then come back with the makeup all messed up. And that in the first 2 weeks of filming, they only shot 3 days worth of footage. This led Tsuji to quit the film, but then Howard and Baker sat Carrey down about his behavior, and the star promised to control his temper, so Tsuji returned to set. Brian Grazer recalled in his memoir, "We had an actor being held prisoner by his costume. He was being tortured by his makeup. So, to help Carrey manage it, Grazer hired a CIA consultant who taught the actor how to endure torture." Carrey later told the Los Angeles Times, "Managing the makeup was a real lesson in Zen. He dealt with it by listening to the Bee Gees and chain smoking through a long cigarette holder so that he wouldn't light his costume on fire." Carrey later told Graham Norton, "If you're freaking out and spiraling downward, turn on the television or change a pattern or have someone you know come up and smack you in the head. Punch yourself in the leg or smoke. Smoke as much as you possibly can." Josh Ryan Evans, by the way, also had to wear that same type of makeup. Carrey ultimately spent 92 days total in the Grinch makeup. And to help keep his spirits up, Howard once got in the makeup himself and directed all day in the Grinch getup in solidarity with Jim Carrey. He also invited Don Knotts, his colleague from the Andy Griffith Show, to set because he knew that Carrey was a big fan. It should also be noted that Carrey did a lot of facial contortion to make the Grinch's signature emotions. A lot of that is just him moving his face and not the prosthetics at all. The rest of the cast also went through extensive makeup to get their Who faces. Jeremy Howard, who played Drew Lou Who, shaved off his eyebrows to help cut makeup time in half. On the busiest day, the movie had 45 makeup artists working at once. Carrey improvised a lot on the film, of course. The scene where he's directing the dog Max, that was Carrey doing an impression of the way Ron Howard directs. Howard found it hilarious and kept it in the film. Carrey also improvised the line, "6:30 p.m., dinner with me, I can't cancel that again." Over the course of production, there were approximately 8,000 makeup application sessions, more than 300 props created, more than 8,000 Christmas ornaments, 1,938 candy canes, 152,000 pounds of crushed marble used as snow, 2 million linear feet of styrofoam used to build sets, 443 costumes total, and a partridge in a pear tree. Filming wrapped in January 2000. The Whoville set was left intact on the Universal backlot for 20 years until it was finally demolished in 2020 to make room for new additions. And in addition to the practical sets and effects, the movie used some CGI as well. For example, there are 40,000 computer-generated trees in the opening sequence. Universal then hired Christmas Queen herself, Mariah Carey, to write and perform an original Christmas song over the credits. She teamed up with James Horner and Will Jennings to write Where Are You Christmas, and she was going to record record it herself, but due to a legal dispute with her ex-husband, Tommy Mottola, who's also the chairman of her label at the time, she was blocked from releasing her version. So Faith Hill recorded the song instead, and it went on to become a chart-topping Christmas classic. Universal went all out with the marketing for the Grinch. It partnered with Toys R Us for big indoor displays, calling them Whobilitation headquarters. Wendy's offered kids meal toys, and there were partnerships with Kellogg's, Nabisco, Hershey's, Visa, and Coca-Cola. Universal also teamed up with the United States Postal Service, which stamped Happy Holidays from the US Postal Service on envelopes. Universal's Orlando theme parks also introduced the Grinchmas event tied to the movie's release, and that's a tradition that continues to this day. How the Grinch Stole Christmas opened on 3,127 screens on November 17th, 2000. It did $55.1 million, which was the sixth biggest opening weekend ever at that point, and it was the biggest opening weekend ever for a Christmas movie. Until it was outdone by, get this, the Grinch animated film in 2018. In the 2000 Grinch's second weekend, it only fell 5.1%, making $52.1 million, which set a record for the highest grossing second weekend ever at that time. The movie then stayed at number one for 6 weeks. In total, it did $260 million domestic, which was number one for the year 2000, and $346 million total worldwide, which was number 6 that year. To this day, it's still the 5th biggest Christmas movie ever at the global box office. Number 1, by the way, is the animated Grinch from 2018. The 2000 Grinch came out on DVD and VHS on November 20th, 2001, and it sold 8.5 million copies in its first week. By the end of the year, it had sold 16.9 million copies, grossing $296 million. Critics praised Jim Carrey, but were not kind to the Grinch overall. Today, just 49% of the 144 reviews assessed by Rotten Tomatoes are positive. Its Metacritic score is 46 out of 100, and Roger Ebert gave it 2 out of 4 stars. But audiences liked it, giving it an A- Cinemascore in theater exit polls. Likewise, it got 3 Oscar nominations: art direction, costume design, and makeup, winning for makeup, naturally. And it also got 2 Razzie nominations: Worst Remake or Sequel and Worst Screenplay, while Jim Carrey won Best Villain at the MTV Movie Awards. Despite the 1966 animated special already being a classic, the 2000 Grinch became a holiday classic in its own right. Unfortunately, that had a bit of a negative effect on Taylor Momsen's life. She later said, "The Grinch changed my life in a multitude of ways. One of them being I was made fun of relentlessly. Every time I would start a new school or go somewhere else, I don't even think the kids knew my name. I was just Grinch Girl. Not even the character name, just Grinch Girl. I got used to it, but it was alienating." Audrey Geisel, meanwhile, teamed up with Universal again to make The Cat in the Hat in 2003. This went so poorly that she then banned Hollywood from doing any more live-action Dr. Seuss movies. But animated movies she was fine with, leading to Horton Hears a Who in 2008, The Lorax in 2012, and The Grinch in 2018, a new adaptation of the story in which Benedict Cumberbatch voiced the character. It did a record-breaking $540 million against a $75 million budget. In 2022, XYZ Films made an unlicensed, low-budget slasher parody of The Grinch called The Mean One, and we're getting a new animated movie based on The Cat in the Hat and Oh, the Places You'll Go in 2026 and 2028, respectively. Despite the Seuss estate banning live-action features, Jim Carrey said in 2024 he would be open to playing the Grinch again if he could do it via motion capture rather than makeup. Thanks for watching this video. If you've made it to the end, drop a kiss it Whoville in the comments. For more movie histories, check out the attached playlist and subscribe to my newsletter for the latest pop culture news.